Today I have my English teacher, and I would like to ask him about English language and some tips about the language. And could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Trent. I'm an English teacher. I teach classes online and also here locally where I live in Mexico. I've been living in Mexico for a few years. I'm from the United States originally, from the state of Florida. And yeah, that's the basics, I think. Anything else you need to know?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Why did you decide to move to Mexico from United States?
That's a long story. But basically, I wasn't so happy with the work that I was doing, and I had the opportunity to teach English online, actually to kids in China through this company. So I started teaching online, and then I was using just my laptop so I could teach from anywhere. And that's when I decided, to travel in Latin America, in part because it's cheaper than like living in the U.S. And I could meet people, do some interesting things. And so that's when I decided to learn Spanish, because I had taken some classes in high school, but I hadn't really made a big effort to learn Spanish. And then I don't know, it's it's a little bit complicated, but there were some relationships, and I ended up moving to Mexico to live here for a little while. And I wasn't sure exactly how long, but now it's been about 6 years, actually.
And do you like to live in Mexico?
I do. The weather is really nice here. The people are really nice. The food is good. I like Mexican food. And of course, the cost of living is cheaper here than in the U.S. So, there are advantages and disadvantages to living in the U.S. Like, you could definitely earn more money and you can earn a higher salary, but you might have a job that's more stressful and maybe you won't have the lifestyle that you want. So, here in Mexico, I have a job that doesn't stress me out too much, and I have time to go to the gym and meet with friends and do different things that I want to do. So yeah, I've been enjoying life here. I'm not sure exactly how long I'll be here, but for the time being, I'm pretty happy.
And let me ask you a question. How long have you been teaching English?
So I've been teaching English. Like, I got that first job teaching online with the Chinese students. I believe at the beginning of 2018, I think, or late 2017. So yeah, it's been almost, I don't know, 8 years or so, 7.5 years maybe. And so I started with that. There was a problem with this Chinese company, in part because decisions of the Chinese government, I think they wanted fewer foreign teachers or something like that, or the kids were being overworked. Anyway, this company kind of closed very quickly, and that's when I moved to a platform called italki, which is where you found me. But before that, I had to take some online training to get a teaching certificate, or to become a certified English teacher. And so that's when I became certified. And then I started with italki students. Now I teach at a school here locally for adults. And, I've taught some people in person. And that's about my teaching experience.
Yeah, and I'm curious about your Spanish. Which kind of level you have?
Yeah, what level? It's hard to say because I've never taken an official test. I've taken some unofficial tests online that have given me a C1 level. So, maybe I'm around there. I think I could pass a C1 test if I did some preparation before I took it, because I think I could speak pretty fluently about, a wide range of subjects. But of course, there's still things I have trouble with. slang and references to cultural things. And of course, Spanish is very widely spoken, so it's difficult for me to understand people in Spain or Argentina, for example, and it's easier for me people in Mexico because they speak in a way I understand.
Let me ask you then a question about fluency, and could you reply, for example, in Spanish language and after that repeat in English, okay? Question is gonna be about fluency. What really fluency means to you?
Okay. Pues para mí la fluidez es la capacidad de hablar sin pensar demasiado. Estoy pensando un poco en este momento porque estoy un poco nervioso. Siento que es un examen. Pero es hablar, sí, tener una conversación sin muchas pausas, sin pensar mucho. Pero no significa que está perfecto, que nunca cometes errores. I'll say that in English. Okay. So basically, I was saying, for me, fluency just means that you can have a conversation about many topics without pausing too much or without having too many difficulties finding words. And you could talk about a wide range of topics. Even though, I think you could still make mistakes. You could still pronounce words incorrectly. You make some small grammar mistakes, or maybe you can't find every word that you need. But to me, it means you can handle yourself in most situations and speak pretty well. I know that's not super specific, but that's kind of how I think of fluency.
Yeah, for me, for example, fluency it's when you can communicate effectively, without hesitation. If you make mistakes, it's okay. And for example, I consider myself as a fluent speaker, but I still make a lot of mistakes. For example, what do you say? You had lessons with me, also you taught me a lot of stuff. And do you consider me as a fluent speaker, for example?
Yeah, in my opinion, you're a fluent speaker because, I think anyone who speaks English can communicate with you, and you're not thinking while speaking with you like, this person has a low English level, or it's difficult to communicate with this person. I think I can communicate with you without really thinking about what I'm saying, and we're just thinking about the conversation, not about your English level. I think maybe that's a good metric, is that when we're not thinking about the fact that you're an English learner, right? We're just having a conversation. I think that's a level of fluency.
I think you are right, yeah. But what do you say for people, for example, they actually can understand English language, they read books, but they still have fear, for example, to speak because they think they probably make a lot of mistakes, and actually how to overcome this fear to speak in English? Do you have any tips for people?
I'm not an expert. I've only learned one language, which is Spanish, as an adult. Of course, I learned English when I was young, as a baby or whatever. I've heard the suggestion, and it's something that's helped me with my Spanish, especially early on, is to talk to yourself a lot, in your house, when you're just doing something. Kind of talk about what you're thinking or what you're doing. Hey, I'm washing the dishes. This dish is really dirty, I can't clean it, and then I'm thinking about my exercise tomorrow. What am I going to do? Should I do this? And you can kind of find words that you want to be able to talk about, maybe. You're thinking about the gym and you want to be able to talk about the gym. So that's one thing that's free and anyone can do it anytime, is to kind of talk to yourself. But really, that might not help you with your nerves when you're suddenly in a situation where you need to speak with other people. You might feel a little more nervous, and I think the best way, if possible, is to find some way of speaking English in a comfortable way. And so that could be like with me, a teacher on italki, or another service, Preply, or anything where you pay a teacher to speak with you, and then it's a safe environment and you can become more comfortable. Or of course, you know, there's other things like just finding some kind of community. Whether if there are English speakers in your city, you can, you know, play board games with people or play tennis or whatever. Find some new hobby and then speak with them. Or there are online communities, you know, like I suggest that people use Discord, which is like a gaming platform, usually, for people to talk during games. But there's Discord servers for, I think, like every topic. So if you're interested in some kind of sport, I don't know, like soccer, like the World Cup is coming up soon. You want to talk about the World Cup, you could find people on Discord to talk about the World Cup with. And, you know, you could just start by listening to other people chatting, and then slowly, you know, talk more and more as you gain confidence and you make friends. And again, you're not thinking about speaking English, you're thinking about the topic of the conversation or whatever, making jokes, having fun. So those are some of my tips for speaking.
Did you learn Spanish when you moved to Mexico, right? In a fluent level, I mean, and because you mentioned that in US you learned the Spanish, but it was only at school, and after that, when you moved to Mexico, you improved a lot, yeah?
Basically, I studied for about a year or a year and a half before I actually moved to Mexico. So I used apps like Duolingo for a while. You know, I don't think that helped me make a lot of progress, but you can learn some vocabulary. I used a couple like audio courses I could tell you more about. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, like Spanish teachers on YouTube that, you know, speak slowly and clearly. They explain grammar. So I watched a lot of that to get kind of listening input and comprehension. And then I did go to a school in Guatemala, which is a small country near Mexico. And because I it's like I read something on Reddit that people suggested like you go to Guatemala because it's cheaper, they have good teachers. So I went to a school there for about 2 months, and I had like a private lesson every day for like 3 hours, like 5 days a week for about 2 months. And so that definitely helped improve my level. So by the time I moved to Mexico, you know, I don't know if I could say I was fluent, but I was like confident at least having a conversation, although I still had a lot to learn.
Is it important to move, for example, to the country where you learn the language, for example?
You know, I don't think it's always necessary, especially if you're learning English, because there are English-speaking communities in, you know, most major cities in the world. So, you know, you don't need to move to an English-speaking country to speak English well, I don't think. And I think a lot of people imagine like, oh, I want to learn French, but, you know, I need to go like study in college in France or live in France for a year to speak French. But, you know, I think you will end up with the problem of arriving, and if you have no level, then you're just going to talk to people in English that you can meet, or whatever your native language is. And you're not going to speak French because it's overwhelming. And you're also dealing with the stress of moving to a new place and adapting to a new environment. So your number one priority isn't going to be like learning the grammar basics or the most common words in this language. You know, maybe it will be motivating once you settle in. Okay, now I really need to study a lot. And okay, so you could study, but you could have studied before you moved to France, you know, to learn a lot of the basics. And I think you want to get to like that intermediate level, at least low intermediate, before you move to another country. I think it's ideal. So then you could start communicating with people there. And yeah, of course it helps to live in that country because you can use it every day when you're going to the store, going to restaurants, making friends, trying new hobbies. So yeah, I don't think it's necessary to move to the country where you want to speak the language.
Especially nowadays when you have internet, you can find someone through online, find teacher, to talk. Even if you don't have money, you can find a lot of applications, some communities, and to talk with people. And but my question also important for me actually, can someone to learn a language after 40, 45, for example, when you're already like adult person and you don't have time and become fluent in a language?
I mean, well, you say you don't have time. Like, is this a very, very busy person, you think? Or
yeah, but for example, let's say if you have 1 hour per day, you already like after 40 and you wanna like learn a language, become fluent, to communicate with people. And for example, is it possible, for example? What do you think, like from just your opinion?
yeah, in my opinion, it's possible, like at any age, unless you're like truly, you have dementia or something and you're very old, then it might become difficult. But if your mind is working pretty well, I think like anyone can learn at any age. I was about 30 when I really started to study Spanish. And, I think I speak pretty well. Of course, my accent is not like native or perfect, but I think to have like a perfect, native level accent, you do need to learn as a child, basically. Or it needs to be like your full-time job to like perfect your accent. And most people don't want to do that realistically.
Sorry for interruption, but but what do you think accent is actually important when you speak in a foreign language, whether it's English or another language? Accent is important or not? And if it's important from your side or not, really, it doesn't matter. But how you can improve accent also in a foreign language, English language particularly, because you are English teacher.
So I would say, because accent, I would say maybe isn't important, but pronunciation is important, right? Like, I think you need to have decent pronunciation to the point where most English speakers in the world can understand you. That's the point, is to communicate, is to be understandable. And I think to sound just like an American, isn't really necessary for most people, to trick people into thinking you're American. I mean, it's cool if you can do that and you want to focus on that, that's fine. But I think for most people, it's just having clear pronunciation and making yourself understood. And what was there another part of that question? I'm sorry. Oh yeah, how to do that? How to improve your accent, improve your pronunciation. I mean, of course, I think like listening is really important. You want to listen to a lot of accents, and like if you want to speak like someone, maybe like listen to them all the time. Like maybe a podcast you like, you can listen to that person and kind of repeat. Again, talk to yourself a little bit at home, maybe. If you hear a phrase and like, oh, that's interesting how he said that, let me repeat it. And so I think that's all going to get your mouth, used to the sounds. There are a lot of like pronunciation drills that you can do where you have like minimal pairs, they're called, like, for example, ship and sheep. Like some people have trouble with that. So really focusing on those sounds like shit, I versus E, ship, sheep, and kind of breaking it down and really studying it. So you can take pronunciation classes that really focus on that. But in general, I think it's just a lot of like listening and repeating, and also recording yourself, I think, is good. So then you can listen back and say like, oh, I do pronounce that kind of weird. And if you have a lot of understanding of the language and how it should sound in theory, then you're going to notice. Or of course, a teacher could also help you with that. Or maybe even AI tools now. I think there are some AI apps for improving pronunciation, so people can try those.
just quickly, I know you are busy, you have lessons after that, and just quickly 2-3 questions, okay? And let's say, for example, if you are gonna start learn a new language, and what you gonna do? Like if you're gonna start from scratch, you know, like let's say you have like 1 hour per day to dedicate for learning language, and what you gonna do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, obviously, like, I think everyone needs to start with motivation. Like, why do you want to do this? Is this important to you? Why is this important to you? Because you need to kind of remind yourself of that. 'Cause I think the most important thing is staying consistent, and you need to stay with it for years, really, if you want to speak a language well. Or at the very least, like 1 year. Maybe you could get to an intermediate level with some languages. But so you need to like know why you're doing this and why you want to do this, why you want to make this a part of your life. Because I think it's not so important what you do every day, just the fact that you're doing something every day, you know? And so you want to find something that works for you, that you enjoy, that makes you, you know, maybe you need to push yourself a little bit, challenge yourself. But I think most of the time it should be pretty fun, pretty enjoyable to learn the language. And so if you're like, I would get maybe a textbook, and if you're starting from zero, you know, like level 1 textbook, and maybe start working on that. But I wouldn't say that's the main focus. I would say maybe that's like 25% of your time. So maybe if you have an hour, work on a textbook for like 15 minutes. Then I would like watch videos. I would watch a lot of videos like on YouTube, and find videos that are at your level, like level 0 in the language, where they're speaking really slowly, they're using gestures and drawings and pictures, so that you're learning comprehension from the beginning. So you're learning how does the language actually sound, versus just studying the grammar in the textbook. So yeah, watching videos, maybe 20-30 minutes or more if possible. And then also like using some kind of flashcards, like maybe you could use Anki or Quizlet, or there's other apps for practicing vocabulary, and you could use some words from the textbook or from the videos that you're watching, and then like add those to your flashcard list, or just get a list of like the top 1,000 words in the language, and spend, you know, maybe 10 minutes a day like memorizing those words, because that's just going to kind of accelerate your vocabulary to at least get you to the basics, where now you're understanding a lot more of those videos, you're understanding more in the textbook because you know those words just through memorization. So yeah, something like that. I would kind of mix those activities, but also some people want to speak immediately. You could get a teacher immediately. I would recommend maybe waiting a couple months before you start working with a teacher, but that's just my opinion. So I don't know. Something like that would be like my study plan.
I understand. But for example, if you don't have 15, 20 minutes, 25, where should you focus more? Like, was it listening or reading or vocabulary, for example? Like, just you have only one activity to do, for example. It's better to consume, for example, language, you know, to understand the language, or it's better, for example, to revise vocabulary, and that's all, you know.
That's a good question. Because there are, you know, I'm not a language learning expert. I've watched a lot of videos and read books about language learning, and so there are different opinions. And some people now are very focused on like comprehensible input, which is like just watching things that are basically at your level or slightly more difficult, and like listening a lot, like a lot, and maybe reading a bit too, but kind of doing that a lot before you speak. I think you need a balance. Like, you need to do that a lot, but also you could start speaking as soon as you want to. So I think if you could do one thing, yeah, it would be maybe like watching some videos at first. Although maybe maybe vocabulary, like I say, like flashcards is the most like time efficient thing you can do, because you're like actively memorizing all these words. So yeah, if that's all the time you have, yeah, maybe memorize more words. But if you're only memorizing words and you have no like context, like you're not seeing it in a video or in a podcast or something, then, you know, I don't think they're going to stick as well. So ideally a mix of both, I would say. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, okay, I understand. But I remember what helped me in English, you know, to really improve, for example, my speaking. It's I listened a lot, and I remember when I started, I couldn't understand, you know, any English. You know, I just consume a lot of videos for beginners, you know, and moved slowly to high level. You know, like I started like A1. You can find now videos on the internet about like English levels, you know. You just type A1, A2, you know, listening, and you can find like basic videos. And I started to remember, and I couldn't understand, and I gradually improved, you know, and it was like a magic, you know, like you can't understand, and after that you start slowly understand. Like you understand what people talking about, you know, and what I did also, just I learned a lot of vocabulary, you know, and because you need the vocabulary to understand what you listen, even if it's the basics, you know. And this helped me a lot, because I remember probably during 6 months I listened, you know, every single day more than 1 hour, and it really helped me, you know, to understand. And nowadays I like my listening like in a good level, you know, and probably speaking slightly, I have slightly less, you know, level in speaking than I can understand people, you know. But I think I'm not bad when I speak also with people, you know, like yeah, I think, you know, like yeah. Keep going.
No, I just wanted to say, like, I think, I mean, and of course that's true in your native language, right? Like, I recognize more words in English than I use in my daily vocabulary. You know, it's like passive vocabulary versus active. So I think that's normal. And just what you said about like noticing when you're improving, when you're understanding more, I think that's really important, is like to gain confidence from those wins and like be happy. Like, wow, I could not understand this A1 video 1 month ago, and now I understand a lot more. And I think people get frustrated because they're not understanding enough, and they give up maybe instead of sticking with it and noticing, okay, I noticed like one more word today, you know. These small wins I think are really important. Anyway.
Yeah, it was actually my case. So yeah, I remember I give up a lot of times actually, you know, and I was discouraged, and I thought at least for me, it's not possible to speak in a foreign language, you know. Even nowadays English, you know, a lot of people speak in English, and anyway, I thought it's just not for me, you know. And I was like really frustrated, you know, about that. And I want to ask you, for example, for people who's gonna watch this video, and how to stay motivated, you know, how to learn a language, even for example you struggle with the language. Some people probably learn faster than others people, you know. But for example, what to do if you are struggle with the language, to learn a language, to understand, you know, to remember vocabulary, but you still want to achieve, for example, a fluent level, for example, become fluent, basically.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think something important to remember is that anybody can learn a language. Like, you don't need to have a special brain, or like you don't need to be very intelligent. Maybe to speak like 10 languages, sure, but to learn at least one more, or maybe 2 languages, I don't think you need to be like a genius. So I think anybody should know, hey, maybe I'm frustrated now, but if I just stick with it and I'm consistent, and, you know, I try new things. If I don't like what I'm doing, try something different. And find things that you love about the language you're learning. If that's English, you know, find music that you love, find a good podcast, find a friend, again, like an online community, a TV show that you like, whatever. You want to find something that you really like. Because I know some people, a lot of people in the world are learning English just because they have to. They feel like for their job or for their career, for their life, they're moving to a new country, so it's totally necessary. So I understand it's like, okay, maybe this language isn't something that you love naturally, but you have to learn it. So I would say do your best to find something, find some way to connect with it, to love it, at least in some way. And that's gonna keep you motivated. And of course, think about always, why are you doing this? Are you doing this for your kids? Are you doing this just to be proud or to interact with new people? Like, what is your reason for doing this? Do you want to have a better career? So thinking about those things every day, I think, is important to stay motivated.
One more question, and about, for example, if you have to learn a language, but you don't like to learn a language, but for example, let's say you move to the country and you don't like the language and you don't have you don't have passion about the language, what to do then?
Yeah, it's hard because I think either you're a very disciplined person and you can just kind of force your way through it because you have to, and that's good. I really admire people like that. I'm not really like that. Like, I can't just keep doing something every day if I hate it, or I don't enjoy it. So again, I would say go back to what is motivating you. Why are you doing this? And then, try to find something. English, for example, is so vast. There's so much in it. There's so many people that speak English that you have to find someone that you like. Oh, I love listening to this person. They're so interesting. Or, I love speaking to these people. Or, I love this band, this singer, this TV series. Again, I don't know. Try to find something. If you can't find anything, keep looking or ask people for recommendations. And just try to make it a part of your life. Things that you already love, do that in English. You love cooking, find a YouTube channel about cooking. I don't know.
Any questions, for example, which I didn't ask you, but you think it's important to ask?
I don't think so. That's pretty much, my whole philosophy on language learning, which is, just from my own experience and from what I've learned from working with students and from things I've read in books, like I say, or YouTube videos. And I think it works. Again, I think the most important thing is consistency and coming back every day, at least a little bit every day. If you miss one day, okay, get back to it. Try not to miss more than one day, I would say, of doing something in the language you want to learn. So that's my advice. I don't think you missed anything. I think it was a good conversation.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and I think we're gonna see each other in my next lesson.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.
If you like the video, subscribe to my channel, and if someone wants to learn English language with a good teacher, I put a description link below with a Tarrant. You can book lessons with him. Thank you for watching.